Viltrox has been producing a lot of lenses recently, and this is one of their newest. I'm excited to be reviewing it. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. A few months ago, I reviewed the 23mm f1.4 with autofocus, and that was a good lens. This is the one that I'm looking at today. This is a 56mm f1.4 with an STM motor. It has autofocus. I see this as a direct competitor to the very good Sigma 56 f1.4. First things first, let's see what comes in the box. And this is quite a small white box. Inside you have some nice padding. You get a couple of papers here. There's a warranty card, there's a user guide, an inspection little certificate, and a Viltrox branded microfiber pouch for the lens. Taking a look at the lens itself, it has front and rear lens caps. Both are made out of plastic. It does come with a nice metal lens hood that is very well constructed, has some nice ridges on the inside. And then we get to the lens itself, which is an all metal construction. It isn't very heavy, but it feels pretty solid. It comes in at just about 290 grams. It features 10 elements in 9 groups. Taking a look at the very back of the lens, you have a metal mount. You do have electronic connections, because again, this lens does have autofocus. There is a micro USB port that is included on this lens mount that can be used for firmware updates. The aperture control ring moves smoothly, although it feels like it is mechanically attached to something on the inside of the lens. So you do hear a bit of a noise. Take a listen. As you move forward from the aperture control ring, there's a nice C logo on the side and Viltrox logo on the other side. The focus ring moves smoothly in either direction. However, it doesn't have distinct stops, so you can rotate it infinitely in one direction and the other. It is also not linked mechanically to anything inside of the lens. Very light to turn, but there's no tactile feedback when you rotate it. Taking a look at the front lens element, it is relatively large. There is some writing here, AF56 f1.4 STM, that is the stepper motor for the autofocus, EDIF 52mm filter thread, and minimum focusing distance of 0.6 of a meter, or just about 2 feet. The entire package is pretty compact for a 56mm, especially for one that is f1.4. When you compare that to the Sigma 56 f1.4, you'll see that the Viltrox is a little bit longer. However, they weigh basically the exact same. These two lenses are very similar in appearance and in overall weight. And both of them look great on the camera. The Viltrox matches perfectly to the body of the A6100 that I'm using here. It is a nice looking lens, no argument there. However, the big question that I have is how good is this Viltrox lens, specifically when you compare it to the Sigma 56 f1.4. Now, I've already established, if you guys have watched this channel, you already know that the Sigma 56 f1.4, in my opinion, is the sharpest, absolute sharpest lens that I've ever tested for your Sony APS-C mirrorless camera. The Viltrox 56 I haven't tried yet, so in this video we're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison. But before I get to that, let's talk about today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for those who are creative and curious. You can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in the world of creativity. They offer classes in illustration, graphic design, photography, film and video, marketing, and many more. One of my goals for 2021 is to get more organized and more productive. So I've recently been taking a class by Mike Vardy titled Productivity Habits That Stick Using Time Theming. The class was easy to follow along and offered a bunch of practical tips like categorizing your emails and sorting it by day of the week, as well as how to export all of your tasks into a separate program. That way you can keep track of what you need to do on a day-to-day basis versus relying on your email where you get inundated with things that distract you. Skillshare is specifically made for learning, meaning there are no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. With an annual subscription, it costs less than $10 per month, which is extremely affordable. And because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 subscribers that use the link down in the description below will get a free trial of premium membership. So definitely check it out. Now let's get back to the comparison. So now let's take a look at both of these lenses in side-by-side comparison shots. What I did is I took my tripod, I took my A6100, and I took my wife out. These are all unedited photos straight out of the camera. They are JPEGs, ready, set, go. I'm gonna keep all of the Viltrox lens images on the left and all of the Sigma 56 images on the right. That way you don't get confused. This is the first shot, both done wide open. Picture of my wife. We'll zoom in. Wow, immediately you can see that the Sigma is by far sharper. This looks a bit soft to me. I wonder if the Viltrox misfocused. But what is good about these two lenses, you could see side by side, the bokeh is nice and creamy on the Viltrox. So the first one is a win for the Sigma 56. Second shot here is a side profile portrait. Again, taking a look at the bokeh, very creamy, very nice on both lenses. If we take a look at my wife's face, this looks a little bit more close. I'd say if you look at the hair detail, the Sigma is still a little bit sharper. Not as big of a difference as the first image, but it is there. There's also some chromatic aberration, some green fringing here that you don't really see with the Sigma 56. The next shot here is a close-up, also wide open portrait of my wife. This, I believe, the Viltrox did misfocus on. I don't even have to zoom in, but I'll do it anyway. You can see there's a huge difference here in sharpness, so we're going to skip this image and say that the Viltrox didn't focus accurately. The next one here is kind of a wider, also wide open shot into the sun, so nice and bright. And here again, if we are looking at the details of the eyes and the face, the Sigma 56 is by far the sharper lens out of the two. Look at just all the detail here in the hair. You can tell there's a very big difference, and there's also some weird color fringing here as well. You see the green and the purple here. Versus less so on the Sigma. So bokeh looks good on both lenses. In terms of optical quality, there's no argument the Sigma is the better lens out of the two there. This next shot is stop down to f4, just trying to see what we can get as far as sharpness. And here, things look much, much better. I would say this is a tie between the two of them. Looks like both of them are nice and sharp at f4. No real difference that I'm noticing. So at f4, I would say the two lenses perform equally well. Now stopping both lenses down to f8, this is a kind of a landscape shot. Wanted to see what we could see as far as sharpness. Immediately you can see the Sigma 56 is noticeably sharper here in the center, moving out to the edge. Again, the Sigma 56 is sharper. Let's take a look at the other side. I'd have to say same thing. Sigma 56. In fact, I could zoom in to, let's do 2 to 1. That way you guys can get a better sense of the sharpness difference here in these branches here versus what you get with the Viltrox. So the Sigma is ultimately sharper, even stopped down to f8 based on that. This next portrait is wide open again of my wife. Zooming in, this is good. Look at that 2 to 1 zoom in. Clearly you can see that the Sigma 56 is sharper out of the two lenses. And look at the fringing that you get with the Viltrox. You see that purple line there. I also noticed it down, where was it? Right here, where my wife's knee is. So nice purple fringing here. There's a little bit of it with the Sigma, but it is much better controlled. So it is a pretty staggering difference when you zoom in 2 to 1 between these two lenses. The background looks good on both, nice and creamy on the Viltrox. The last shot here is done at f2, so stop down a little bit on both lenses. And we'll zoom in again 2 to 1 here. There's a little bit less of a difference. So again, the Viltrox is sharper as you step it down, but unfortunately it's just not quite as sharp as that Sigma is stopped down as well. So I'd say the Sigma wins in this comparison. And there you have it. I mean, there's, what is that, 7 or 8 portraits and a couple of other shots. and you can see that clearly the Viltrox had a couple of issues with autofocus, but even in situations where the autofocus was spot on and nailed, it was still unfortunately not as sharp as the image you get straight out of the Sigma 56. In the end, the Sigma 56 f1.4 prevails as the sharper lens from the two. I wasn't really questioning which one of these lenses was going to be sharper. Now, that's not to say that the Viltrox 56 f1.4 is a bad lens, and in fact there are a lot of good qualities about it. Overall, the images that I got with it were very good, and if I wasn't comparing it directly to a very sharp lens, I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. In the center, it was nice and sharp. The autofocus worked relatively well. That's one of my nitpicking points with this lens. Is you saw in the comparison there were a couple of shots that were iffy when it came to autofocus. I found that in video mode this lens does exceptionally well when it comes to autofocus. However, with photos, for some reason, especially wide open at f1.4, there were multiple occurrences where the autofocus would just go crazy. I mean, it would just focus here, there, here, there, here, there very quickly, and it would never actually settle down, and you'd have to take the shot while it was going crazy with the focus, which I'm guessing is an issue that Viltrox will eventually address with a firmware update. But it only happened twice to me in my week or so of testing this lens. When you stop this lens down, it does get sharper, as you would expect. That's typically what happens with most other lenses. It's just not quite as sharp wide open at f1.4 as the Sigma. So the price on this lens is right around $300 right now. And last time I checked, the price on the Sigma is $400. No question, it's worth every penny of that extra $100. However, if the price on the Viltrox drops, and I've seen it as low as $279, if it gets down to around the $200 mark, that is a different conversation, because I think that when you combine the build quality, which is all metal, the separate aperture control ring, the autofocus that's built in, nice and quiet and relatively accurate, and then the firmware upgradability, when you look at all of that and then you look at the performance, which is good, it's not as good as the excellent performance that you get from the Sigma, but it is still good and adequate for most cases. This is a decent lens to consider. But as it sits right now for $300, I'd say save up a little bit more, get the Sigma, and you will be happier that you did. Anyway, thank you to Viltrox for sending this lens out for review. I have their 30mm, I believe, that I will be reviewing in an upcoming video as well. So if you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of this comparison and which one of these two lenses you would pick up. Anyway, see you guys soon. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.